All right, everyone, good morning. Good afternoon for you on the East Coast. Thank you again for joining us for another session of the art and science of pricing signs. This session, as you may know, is being taped, so it'll go into our archives if you want to review it later or view it later if I've gone through some things that you want to at least touch up on. But I'd like to have these sessions, if I can, as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, if you want to jump in, that's great. If not, we'll have some of those at the end. And I also like to have some individuals, if they can, if they want to, share some ideas and thoughts that they might have on some pricing as we go through these particular sessions. So with all that being said, I did bring Martin Neal with me on today as a guest, and he has shared some ideas with me about this particular session. So he's going to jump on and give us a few ideas as we go through this. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint, and we'll talk about actually on the last session. Sheree, just don't get too far ahead of me now. You know, I kind of poke along. Our last session was on lobby signs, and what we did is we took an actual example of a project that was accomplished, and what we did to get to that point, providing the customer a couple of different options between the stainless steel cut letters and then also painted aluminum letters because of the cost. And after we actually did the job from the standpoint of doing the site survey and coming up with a project estimate, the customer agreed to that particular aluminum type sign. And then after we got done with the entire project, we wanted to measure what we did to see if we made any money, and if we did, how did it actually come about with all the costs we had in place. And we'll do that today again with another simple example of a wayfinding sign. Okay, Sheree, next slide, please. So with wayfinding, wayfinding is really different from any other types of signs. Wayfinding signage is concerned with helping to direct you from point to point or confirming your progress along a route. Wayfinding signage, in other words, is not advertising signage or informational signage, such as digital display, but falls into some main categories. Next slide, please. There we go. So with this, the types of categories that we have, they fall into different ones. One is directional signage that actually, excuse me, that takes you from, gives you kind of a finger post sign directional, so you know you're going in that particular direction. Confirmational signs are ones that you've arrived somewhere, you're at an airport, it says gate 20 is 5 minutes away. This signage is specific for you to understand that you're on the right direction that you're heading towards, and you know how long it's going to take to that particular point. So it basically gets you on the right path. Informational sign, like LEDs, flight displays, gives you an idea of what's actually going on and what you should be expecting if your flight has been delayed or if it's on time, and it gives you that information that you need to go ahead, that you're on the right route to your destination. Okay, next slide, please. So why is wayfinding important? And this is a big topic. It's a big subject. It's a big product type for you as a sign world owner to be able to provide good wayfinding signage. There's different areas that this falls under: safety and security. This particular example is for crowd control, directing people efficiently towards their seats in sports stadium. I have a typo there. Prevents any potential issues from overcrowding. Commercial steering behavior is invaluable for commercial outlets and locations on how they make profits, everywhere from exhibition centers, tourist attractions, airports, urban centers, shopping malls, etc. They all use wayfinding to guide people to spend and to go in certain directions. Okay, next slide, please. So in this particular example, and when you do a fair amount of hiking, you're out on trails, you'll see a pile of rocks. And is this actually wayfinding? And I think it is to a certain degree, because it gives you that a little bit of a, I know where I'm heading and I'm on the right path or right trail. But with regards to wayfinding, you want to go ahead and make sure that this is set up in such a way where you're creating some repeat business, very positive customer experience. A lost user who is highly stressed is far less likely to return. This has a detrimental effect on users and impacts the decision of whether or not to return. So what you want to do is you want to take all these particular elements into consideration when you're putting together wayfinding projects for your particular customer. It truly is, and I like this slide, gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that you found where you're going. And you've experienced it yourself when you're trying to go to your doctor's office, or if you're going to a sporting event or the airport, wherever it is, you're always looking for those wayfinding signs to provide you that yeah, we're at the right place, and hopefully we're not too stressed out because we're not running too late. So the other part of this too is efficiency and enjoyment. When you think about and you probably have experienced this yourself, when you go to a particular customer and they're asking for some type of wayfinding signs, you have to look at it through the eyes of, as you're trying to find what is going on at that particular location, and then provide some suggestions and maybe some examples of what you might be able to put into place for them to provide them a better opportunity to capture that customer's interest, and also maybe even make sales for their particular business. All right, next slide, please. So we're going to go ahead and break one down here real quick. And this is a fairly simple example. And there's three, if you can see in this particular slide, there's basically three locations for this particular level one floor, first level. We have a large one over on the left-hand side with some directions heading up that escalator and some other information that might be up there. We have this larger box that's built and painted and ready to go, has some features on the side of it that are probably a PVC item that needs to be put into place. But I'm just strictly going to break this down, and then another one goes over to the right behind that large cube. Now, the cube, when you take a look at it, if you're at that location, you can take all the measurements you need so you have a really good idea of what it might be. But let's say you don't have time to run down to the convention center or wherever this might be, and you take a look at the sides of that escalator, it's in the background, and you can give yourself an opportunity to bid on this from just a rough item standpoint. Just how tall is that cube that's in the middle? How big is that area on the left-hand side? If I'm 6 feet tall and I'm standing at that escalator, that's probably 6 feet or 8 feet tall, possibly in that particular area. So when you do this, you can take those areas and break them out into, say, chunks or square foot areas, and be able to provide a rough estimate for your customer of what you might charge to not only put this estimate together for you to provide them an estimate, but also to sell the job. And in this particular case, there's some other issues you want to take into consideration, and that is the green looks like it's a specific green. It might not be something that we can just buy off the regular printed vinyl that's already a solid color. So we're gonna have to print these graphics. We're gonna have to go ahead and lam them. So let's go through the steps. Let's just go to the next slide and see how we're gonna break this out. In the past, I've talked about a BOM, and I'm introducing, I may have mentioned this before as well, but a BOM is a bill of materials and a BOO is a bill of operations. So what you want to take into consideration is everything that goes into this particular job. What is the material? Put an entire list of all the materials that's going into it. And then what are the steps that are going to take to actually complete the project, and if you're going to be compensated fairly for everything that you're going to do. So in this particular case, I basically did a quick rough number, and I thought, okay, for us to be able to do this at $95 an hour, and that's on the do a rough layout and provide the customer an idea of what we would charge for that design. We're going to put 2 hours at $95 an hour. So our in-house cost at this time would be $190. When it comes to the material cut final graphics, I'm figuring we've got a couple of areas that are 32 square feet, one that's about 24 square feet. Total that together, we have about 88 square feet at about $9 a square foot. But understand too that this is a digital print, comes with laminate. You're going to cut, weed, tape it. You might be able to nest some of the letters together, meaning that you're not just going to use a full sheet of material and then just waste a whole bunch of it. You're able to put this together in such a way where when it's time to cut it, you're going to use a little bit less and save yourself some overall costs on the material. One of the other considerations that we have is that $9 might be the minimum that we'd go ahead and cost this out at, but it could be as much as $14 a square foot. So between 9 and 14, and it has a lot to do with the customer. It has a lot to do with what you think it's going to, what the customer might be willing to spend, how big the project might end up being. So there's other considerations to take into account when you're putting this project together.
George,
Yes, sir.
I got a comment about this, and like I've kind of set Corebridge up with your machine costs and put the operations and things in there. And what I'm really finding is that price per square foot is really dependent upon the volume of that material as those fixed costs of the machine gets distributed across all the material. So if you're just going to come in here and do a couple of square feet, it's going to be way more than $9 a square foot.
Absolutely.
Then if you're going to be doing 100 or 200 square foot, then that price per square foot goes down drastically.
That's correct.
I used to be a little squirrely about, quoting $80 for a 2 foot square piece, but I'm just putting it in there, and the price it comes out is it's my cost structure. Here's the machine, here's the run times, here's the labor we're doing, here's the square foot application at a price per square foot. So,
and that's a really, really good point. And I think Martin can touch on this too, because what you have to really take into consideration is the actual size of the job. Because if you have at $9 a square foot and it's a 2 square foot job, you're not going to sell that for $18. You can't. You're going to lose your butt on that. That job's got, you almost really have to start out with a minimum.
That's a good idea. I mean, everyone's going to have a minimum, right? So it might be $100 minimum, but you're going to be pricing in your install. There's other costs to install to price in here, and the install is going to be a trip fee plus the time to install, and you're going to have an overall price that you can decide what the final price is going to be. But the variable is going to be the install price as well, so you can make up your margin on that for sure.
Absolutely. Let's say the job is much smaller and you're not even anywhere near $9 or $14 a square foot. You might be closer to $25 a square foot or $30 a square foot. You have to take that scale, as you had mentioned, Grant, and really consider, the numbers in Corebridge are going to kick out something for you, but then you have to look at that and decide, is this really worthwhile for me, and is this worthwhile for my customer? Because of the work that you have to put into it, it's not static. It really is not. You really have to take everything into consideration. But in this particular example, I'm trying to give a good idea of what numbers that we will put together to go ahead and provide an estimate with about 88 square feet. Now, the other thing you have to take into consideration is, and I think I might have that on the next slide, but we're not ready to go there yet, but there's a certain amount of lead-in material that you're going to have to get your printer going. There's a certain amount of lead-in material you're going to have for your laminator. And so this 88 square feet is going to be greater because of those particular items and issues that you have to consider. Go ahead, Grant, you have your hand up.
Yeah, a couple more comments. One, I know that we've talked about in our mastermind group as far as that price per square foot. there's probably going to be a 0 to this many square foot, the 0 to 10, and then a 10 to 30, and a greater than 30 price
Right.
based on some groupings there. And then with regard to the lead in, I know that Corebridge has a layout manager.
Yeah.
And you can even have it calculate your scrap, charge the cost for the scrap, cost margin for the scrap, and include that, here's the, startup material that you'll need to get the printer going. So
Right.
just putting that out there.
And then there's one other item that, and I appreciate your input on that too. There's one other item that's going to come up, and that's the shoot, that the head strike, the material got wrinkled, and so you might need to add even more because you didn't use exactly that amount of square feet, and there was a mistake, and we had to start over again. I know some owners will actually double their price because they want to make sure they cover for those particular, issues that may come up. It could be a hard sale for your customer saying, okay, so I have to pay for your mistakes. I don't get that. But you have to think about all the other things that lead into this, and that's your ability to do this in such a way where it's you're efficient. Everybody knows their job. The machine's working well. So there's more to this, that we go back to the art and science of pricing science, but there is more to it than just a straight number, and that's important to understand as well. Okay, so onto the installation, travel time to the site, how much time is it going to take to lay out the graphics and apply them, depending on how far it is from the shop, how much time it's going to get there, park, all those things you have to take into account, and then their travel time back. So this particular situation, I've got 2 hours at $125 an hour, and that's because it was relatively close to the shop. In my consideration for this particular presentation, as mentioned in other projects that we've looked at before, you want to put something together that isn't complete. It provides the customer enough information that they understand what they're going to be getting, so you can get that deposit and then get the details in there that you need for them to approve before you go into production. And that's very, very important, because if you go ahead and try to do a job in such a way where you basically have worked with the customer and say, well, it's going to be kind of like this or kind of like that, it'll come back to bite you. It will, and it does every time. So those details are important, and the details are important for not only you when they approve that, but also for your staff when they're building that particular project, that they were able to follow the size, the colors, the location. All that is really critical. It truly is. The devil's in the details, and try not to skirt those at all, because it'll hurt you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so taking those particular items that we put up there on the previous slide, our design is approximately $190. Our cut graphics are close to $800. Our installation is $250. So our estimate to our customer is $1,232. Doesn't include tax, but this is a rough number from what we expect to do and what we've seen in these particular slides, and that's for these applied graphics. So we'll go on to the next slide. There's a nice big picture, I think, of what that will look like we saw earlier. Again, so you've got your two walls, 32 square feet, another one that's a little bit smaller, 24 square feet. Again, this is an estimate. So you get into the details, and the customer comes back to you and says, well, I'd really like to have, or, okay, that's a good number, but I was expecting to pay a little bit more. Can you add some extra features to it? Now you can go ahead and increase your estimate to satisfy their particular needs. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that's really important, and you don't have to do it on every project, because it is somewhat time consuming, but if you do have the time to be able to pull these aside from time to time and actually check what you've done, you're going to get a better idea on your next job if you need to charge more, or even more than that, to understand what your costs are and not give away the farm. This is pretty darn important because you're in business to make money. So at the end of this particular job, taking into consideration lead-in for the vinyl print plus the total print area, the cost on this, the actual cost on this particular job at about $4 to $5 per square foot. That includes your print, your lamb, your cut, your weed, and your transfer tape, because that's not cheap. About 100 square feet, $400. So the actual profit on that should be about close to another $400, give or take. Design time at your shop rate, if you have that set up as your actual cost, it's 65, and we sold it for, I think it was $90 or $95 an hour. So the estimate was at $190. So we should make some profit on our shop rate as long as we stuck to what we had proposed we were going to do. The actual time to install, found an outside sub to take care of this at $50 an hour, charged 2.5 hours. So we made a little bit of money on the install. So the total profit on this job would be, say, $570 or so. Now, something to consider, and it doesn't take too much to do this, but even talking to your customer, is it possible for you to not use colored or doing a digital print on your vinyl and then laminating it and cutting it and weeding and taping it by using just stock material that's a color that's close enough to satisfy them? That material is a lot cheaper. It doesn't require all those extra steps. You can nest your letters together as you should on the other, where we talked about printing those letters. You don't want to nest them in such a way it looks like alphabet soup, but you've got your lines already laid out. And so when it's time to install, it's not a takes twice, 2 times, or 3 times the amount of time you had originally estimated. But you can save yourself some additional cost, either pass it on to your customer, or you can go ahead and put that money in your pocket. So these are some thoughts. This is that particular project. My next slide, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about wayfinding and how big, again, this industry is. Before I do, though, Martin, do you have anything you want to share up to this particular point?
No, I think this is a good format for just doing quick quotes based on per square foot, dollar per square foot. But the example that you're showing is vinyl on a wall.
Right.
I can go over one of my applications if you'd like a little bit later, but I think everyone's got to understand that there's many different types of wayfinding signs. Yeah, it's probably the largest category of signage out there. You're dealing with a vinyl application. I can look at a substrate application that we're working on currently, but I think this is a good quick method to give a quick estimate to clients.
Okay, next slide, please. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up to you is that you are learning so much about this particular business, and if you can spend some time getting on the internet, there's a lot of information that's out there. There's certifications that you can actually work towards, where you can actually be hired on as a consultant, as a company, to provide a package that could go into a hospital or go into a school, airport. There's so many applications that are out there where this comes into play. And as Martin mentioned just a minute ago, it's just a huge part of this industry. And before you got involved with even getting involved with the sign business, you had no idea what it was like. And what you do, the signage is everywhere. We just take it for granted, but it needs to be done in such a way where it's thorough, it's been thought out, it's been done in such a way where it's going to satisfy all those categories I spoke about earlier, and it's going to help the customer have that experience that they need to make sure that they know where they're going and what they're looking for. Okay, Martin, we have some time, I think, unless there's something someone else wants to, we've got another, a little less than 30 minutes left. Does anyone want to share something this time, or Martin, do you want to bring up something that you have that you can share as well?
Yeah, I can show something we're working on currently that, just gives everyone an idea of what another wayfinding sign project might look like.
Okay, go ahead.
Just invite questions through there. Let me just get my screen up. Let me know when you see it, George.
I'm looking, and here it is, starting to share a screen. There we go. I see emails.
I don't want to shake those.
I see a wonderful background with a beached boat. There we go. Good.
All right. See if we can. So let me see here. This is a floor plan of, a bunch of offices. There's 2 floors in this building. You've got an entrance over here on the west side and an entrance over here on the east side. So there's 2 floors like this. There's something like 50 offices. So we bid on a project, and a lot of pricing questions may come up about how you price things competitively. And to me, there's 2 types of quotes. There's going to be one where you're referred and there's no competition, and you've got quotes where you've got other competition. So that might be something to bear in mind. So here's a floor plan, and I'll show you the drawings that were made for the scope of this project. Make this a little bit larger. So this is what we presented to the client. I'll just go quickly through the pages, but this image here is a digital sign, and this will be an interactive touch screen. There's going to be 3 of these. So when you come into either one of those entrances, there's going to be a touch screen where you touch it, and you try and find the suite number from the client that you're there to visit. And above that, we're going to do some FCOs, just to label which floor they're on, which lobby entrance they're in. And you can see from the floor plan where that's going to be. And then there's these pillars. We're working with a contractor that's going to repaint the walls and retile the flooring and build this cabinet that we can put in a digital sign. And they're going to build these pillars, paint them red. We're going to come along and put these white acrylic letters and numbers on here. And these signs, the heart and soul of the wayfinding, they're just directional signs. They show where the elevators are, the restrooms, and all the suites. So as you go down those corridors, you can see it on the pillar here. What is down that left side. So it's going to be easy. So throughout the building, you're going to have these types of signs. Okay, there's one more digital sign there, more of this, more of that, and more of these. So these are throughout the building. These are made of 1/4-inch acrylic. They're painted to a specific color code that they have. It's a blue-gray, but they're 1/4-inch acrylic with vinyl, and they're just applied to the wall with tape and silicone. And again, you can see where it's going to be placed here on the floor plan. There's some vinyl signage on walls here, and we've got several of these similar signs, but this one's they're hanging. So the difference between this and what you showed, George, is you had vinyl on a wall in one location.
Right.
This is a building, a pretty small building, typical commercial building, 2 entrances, 2 floors, 50 suites, and the owner has decided to install better wayfinding signs because the feedback was it's not easy to get around and people get lost, as small as it is. So rather than vinyl on the walls, we've got vinyl on acrylic that's placed on the walls throughout the property. And this is this is a nice little project. You know, it's not just one entrance, it's the whole building. And you can see, and that's the point of wayfinding, is when you go into a property, especially with a lot of corridors, it's easy for people to get lost. And there's two entrances to this building. Unless it's labeled properly, people coming in forget where they put their car, park their car, and which entrance they east, they west. Where do I find my car? So this helps greatly. And what's nice about this project is they wanted these digital signs as well. So we're getting these touch screens. We're having them programmed with some graphics, and all that is priced in. And of course, I would not price this through price per square foot. We use Shopbox, not Corebridge, but Corebridge would be the same. You know, you're using the system to allow you to get the right pricing for the production based on quantity, the install time based on quantity, and using it to drive the right profit. So I just wanted to show what a different style of directory project might entail. And it's only because I'm working on this currently that you know, we're due to install this all next month.
I have a quick question for you, Martin. On this project, did you design and create this because you walked the building, or your project manager walked the building, or did you get this particular artwork from their architect or their designer because of their remodeling that was going on?
Good question. So we're working with the owner of the building is working with the property management, which is CBRE. We're working directly with them and the architect.
Okay. And is this a repeat customer, or is this a brand new?
This is a bid. So there were two other competitors. We did a site walk with, sometimes you have to do a site walk, right? With the other bidders.
Right.
And we did that with the two other companies. They went through months and months of changes. The architect was driving that with the owner, and we bid the project and stuck with it all the time. This was a first-time client, so we hadn't worked with this client before. We had bid other projects with this client. This was the first one that we won with them. So in nature of pricing, I priced it competitively to win this project so I can get working with a good client that's potential repeat down the road.
Yeah, developing that relationship. And then the other part of this too is, how much time did you put into providing some designs, some ideas? Did you budget something like that, or did you just provide a number initially without them really even knowing what they're going to get?
No, there's like 30 or 40 line items on my quote here, so it's pretty intense. The advantage with this is we're not designing this, because an architect is involved. The architect has designed it. They've supplied all the drawings. So there's a little design time on this.
Okay.
If we did design it ourselves, we'd have to be in direct contact with either the architect or the owner, and we would price it a little bit differently to incorporate some design time. But no, I've just quoted the production of these signs with install time.
Right.
And,
so they basically had an apples to apples quote from these other competitors, and depending on how your presentation was done, and some from the standpoint that they may have worked with you before, a little bit more confidence maybe even as well.
Yeah, the scope of this was interior and exterior. The exterior was the refacing and the refacing of 4 monument signs.
Okay.
And so it was in 3 parts. One was the exterior, one was the interior, and one was the third part was the digital sign. So the digital sign wasn't specified. That was up to me to supply that proposal with the graphic design. In fact, the graphic design for the wayfinding was the most expensive, most complex part of that part of the project.
Yeah.
So it was in 3 parts, but if it was just one part and it was just interior, you would see this as it was.
Very good. Appreciate you sharing that. That's great. Is there, and I think you have that maybe down onto one of those slides. Yeah, I see it over to the left, College Park. Or is that something
I
different?
was going to show you something else here. I got a lot of stuff here. This
All right,
one here.
go ahead.
So, you know, we're talking about making stuff in-house, but I wanted, I'm not sure the call is online here, how long they've been in business, but you showed that very first slide, I think, with a typical kind of wayfinding sign. And I wanted to show everyone the benefits of Vista, a sign world supplier. This is a sample board I have in my shop. You can get them from Vista for reasonable price. But there's every kind of wayfinding sign that they supply. And you can outsource this, print the inserts, and have a complete scope of wayfinding signs for interior and exterior. You can work with Vista to add these signs to your website, so you can have a dedicated page to wayfinding and show these kind of products and show that you can cover the whole scope. And sometimes clients come to the website, they'll look for ideas on what kind of signs they want, and these products help greatly. So
And this particular product too, with Vista Systems, it provides quite a bit of flexibility as clients come and go, changes are being made throughout the facility. Because it's a printed insert, it's easy to upgrade, and that's a big benefit for your customer as well.
Yeah, so you know, you might work with a client that's working with just a handful of signs, or you might be lucky to work with a client, especially if it's a property management, where they're upgrading and replacing signage in a whole building. And that's the more interesting part of these projects, is to find those clients.
Can I ask a question real quick? Have you ever worked with Vista and had the Braille part on there?
Yes.
What
can do that
what
for you.
type of was it like Vista, Vista Square, Sharp? Like which one was it that you added it into, and like how did that take place?
It would have been a sign like this one here, and it's typically an office, where it's named an office, a suite number, and they want Braille because it's a public building.
Yeah. Where did the Braille piece go on that sign though?
So this has a lens. These all have plastic lenses. They're clear lenses, and they clip into these frames. They supply you with an orange sucker that you can pull them out easily.
It's up in the right-hand corner, right above that. Yeah, do you see the little sucker up there?
This right here. So where they go is wherever you want them to go. But let's say this sign, I don't see one here that has, let's say David Smith here. You know, you can put it under the CEO. It has to meet ADA code, obviously. But it typically goes up in one of the corners with a suite number.
And did they make it for you? Like, did they make the insert for you?
Well, the insert, no, not the insert. You do the insert, because you can graphic design any insert you want, but the lens, they can add the Braille and the tactile to ADA code on the clear lens.
Okay, got it.
It's a separate piece.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then how do you go about having them add themselves to your website?
Well, no, they'll supply you the images and the content, but you'd have to work with your web your web company to add that page in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
But there's blade signs here. They have stand-up directory signs, you know, with the monument, as it were, the casing. There's quite a range to their product. As far as pricing concerned, you know, you're outsourcing it, you're buying it, and you're marking it up by 2 to 3 times. You're still adding in your install, and of course you're pricing in the cost of the inserts. So there's, you know, they're good projects to get into, and I think the margins can be pretty reasonable.
All right, there's some other questions, I think, in the Q&A box. Sherry, can you bring those up for us at all?
Yes. So Dan asks, for wayfinding opportunities, have you found that the customer knows what they want, or do you need to help them create all of the wayfinding arrows, text, placement, etc.?
Okay, I'll get to that. And what's really important is that it's going to be both ways. There, in this particular session, and what Martin shared with us is they had an architect that was coming up with that, and you need to have some understanding and certification to make sure that you're doing things in such a way, because it could affect your ADA aspect of it. So we would typically not want to take on that responsibility in case there's some liability that was tied to it, and have the architect provide that information for what they needed. But in certain situations, I mentioned earlier too, is to get on the web, learn these things, maybe even become certified and design these things for yourself. But there is simple wayfinding items that you can do that you don't need that certification. It's just providing those directional signs for the clients that are reaching that particular building or municipality, whatever that might be.
So I got something to add there. So the project I showed you was provided by the architect, but there are opportunities with other clients where we do provide the proposal ourselves. It does require you to walk with your customer to go through the floor and explain exactly what you can provide and what they want, and you can provide your own proposal that way.
Suggestions.
With this particular client, I showed you the wayfinding, but the building had inadequate ADA egress signage, and we know enough about egress signage, exit signage, and egress signage, evacuation maps, that we recommended that we do an audit to walk the floors and come up with a proposal to replace all the ADA signs. And that was additional to this project. So that's still under consideration. But we simply walked the floors, did an audit, and came up with a proposal to replace those. And as well as the tenant signage. So I think a lead in with wayfinding can work with ADA, suite signage, and some other signage opportunities.
Right.
Once you walk the floor and you're there with the client, all these opportunities, you know, they pop up from nowhere.
It's spring to life.
I was going to say, like a flower, you know, a bud to a flower, they just grow.
They can grow and grow. Okay, Sheree, you have another one for us?
Next one is, do you know any of the resources that can help us learn about wayfinding design best practices?
I think the best place to start is to get on the internet. You know, just go type in wayfinding, and there'll be videos that'll be there. There'll be explanations that'll be there. There'll be some professionals that are going to share their information. It is a huge industry. It absolutely is one that you should get involved with and get to know, because you'll become very valuable to your clients' needs, and that's going to help your business grow for sure. Any other questions?
that was it for Q&A. So if anyone else would like to unmute themselves and ask.
Do you want me to stop sharing here and pull you back to your slides?
You could, we were getting pretty much to the end where it was just Q&A and I think that was anything else that anyone else might have that they'd like to bring up at this particular time. But if that's if there isn't anything else that anyone has at this particular time, I want to thank you again for being on this particular session. As I mentioned earlier, it's taped and you can bring it up later if you'd like. And wish you good luck with this particular product type. It almost encompasses everything with signage, obviously, and you'd be able to achieve some really good sales and some great customers with wayfinding type signage. So with that, I think we can head out. Wish you all a very great holiday this next Thanksgiving. Always leave room for pie, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Martin. Talk to you soon.
Will do.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.